welcome back to my channel. So today's video I'm actually really excited to film, and it's the eyeshadow palette tag created by Samantha and Allie Glines. I love their versions of the video, and I've seen so many other people do it. Recently I've seen Julia Perez do it. Her username is by Julia Perez, and I loved watching her do it, and I feel like I finally have enough eyeshadow palettes to do this tag. So I had a decent number of eyeshadow palettes, but at the start of quarantine I decluttered all except one of them, and since the start of quarantine I have gained like 9 others, which I'm not proud of, but some of them I either got as gifts or I got for free. Like I got a free Charlotte Tilbury one with purchase, my boyfriend got me one for my birthday, and just I'm not trying to make myself feel bad about it because overall I didn't spend that much money because I either had a gift card, I got it on sale, I got it as a gift, or whatever, and I genuinely use all of these palettes, so I'm really excited to talk about all of them. I tried to fit them into each category as best as I could, but I tried to do it in a way where I wouldn't have repeat palettes. So like for example, in the everyday palette category, I put a palette that might not be my favorite everyday palette, but the one that is my favorite I already put somewhere else, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm really excited for this video, and let's just get into it. By the way, on my lips I'm wearing the Ilia Balmy Gloss in Petals. I did a video swatching the ones I had recently, so that's what I'm wearing. So let's just get right on into it. So the first category is your newest eyeshadow palette, and oh my gosh, I got this today. I'm wearing it on my eyes. I am so ecstatic. I think this is like the palette that I'm most excited to have gotten, and also probably my favorite eyeshadow palette. It's the Natasha Denona Tropic palette, and I have another Natasha Denona palette, and I thought that one was going to be my favorite Natasha Denona palette. I thought it was the only one that she made that ever called to me because all the other ones were so dramatic. But then I think her username is Sammy Loves Makeup. I know her name is Sammy, I believe, and she keeps posting pictures of this palette on Instagram, and I'm like, okay, these colors are right up my alley. Like you get your section of pinky colors, which I mean I love pinky colors on my eyes, and then you get some browns that are like neutral. They have a little bit of warmth, but it's nothing so dramatic. They're just neutral browns. You get some shimmer shades, which these are pretty wearable for every day, and then the bottom row is colorful, which I don't wear color like on the daily, but I think like this dark blue will be nice as like a liner on the lash line. This purple is my favorite color, so I'm so excited to finally have a light purple because I've been wanting to get like a little purple palette from ColourPop or Huda because I just want to wear purple eyeshadow, so I'm excited to have this to start out and see if I actually like it. And then these 3 are just going to be fun to play around with, and it's genuinely a palette that I feel like I can get so many looks out of. I know it's kind of boring and there's a lot of mattes, but genuinely like this is my perfect palette. It is her large eyeshadow palette, so it's the larger size. I'll show you a little sneak peek, but I have the bronze, which is her mini, and this is the size difference. So it is a large palette. You do get bigger pans, and therefore the original price I believe is $129. Here's the difference in the pan sizes. So this one is a lot bigger, but this one is originally I believe $129, but it was 50% off at Sephora. It still has been for a while, so if you're interested in this palette, definitely pick it up soon. It is limited edition, so once it's gone, it's gone. So if you're interested in this palette, I highly recommend picking it up. The formula is amazing. And right now they have a sale where you get $15 off 75 or 20 off 100, which is 20% off, so I just couldn't resist. I knew if I didn't pick up this palette I would just be regretful once it went out of stock, and I'm so glad I got it. This is so inspiring, and I feel like this is like the palette I would choose if I had to get rid of every other palette, because like these are the only looks I do. I don't like super deep eyeshadows, so if you have lighter skin or you just like really light eyeshadows with a little bit of depth options and some shimmery options or colorful options, I highly recommend this palette. I love it so much. Next question is the oldest palette, which I think my oldest palette, actually I might have it because I haven't decluttered it yet. This is actually my oldest palette, but it's decluttered out of my collection, so I'll talk about the one I actually chose. It literally has dust on it. It's the Too Faced Natural Matte. This was my first high-end eyeshadow palette, and it's in like the old packaging. I liked to use this just for everyday shadows. This is what got me into eyeshadow. I used to have so many palettes because I've always liked watching beauty YouTubers, but I never wore makeup, which is the weird thing. Like, I always wore brows, concealer, and mascara, but besides that, I never wore cheek products. I rarely wore eyeshadow, and if I did, it was just one of these shades on a lid. So I bought so much, but I never used it, so it just sat around and went to waste. So all of the eyeshadow palettes I recently got rid of are a few years old, which is why I only have one of my old eyeshadow palettes, and all of these are new because I decided to replace them with palettes that I would actually use, and I'm really happy. But the oldest eyeshadow palette that I still have in my collection is actually disgusting now that I look at it. It's the Tartelette in Bloom. It looks like this. It's in my project pan. You get a little sneak peek. I love this palette. This is the only palette I brought with me to college my freshman year. But this one was my favorite because of this shade Smarty Pants. This was my favorite shade just for a one shade shadow. If I was doing my makeup, I would just take Smarty Pants, put it on my eyelid, and then that was it. So this is my oldest palette. It was also my favorite, but it is getting old. The packaging is not broken, but it doesn't close the way it used to. So I'm trying to use up the shades that I like and get this out of my collection because it is really similar to palettes I have. The formula is fine, and this is a cult classic at one point. Like, everyone had this palette, but I'm just excited to get it out of my collection because I've had it in there for so long. Okay, next topic is most expensive, which overall the most expensive is the Natasha Denona Tropic palette because it is $130, which is disgustingly expensive. No formula of eyeshadow is worth $130, but I actually didn't pay that much for it. So the eyeshadow palette that I paid the most for is the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. This was $65. So it is the normal size of her mini palette. As you can see, beautiful bronzy colors. I have pictures of this on my Instagram. This one is definitely a lot more shimmery than the Tropic palette. So if you like shimmers and you like the warm bronzy tones, I would recommend this. I have this down in another category for later, but personally, I like the palette, but I don't get all the use out of it like I will with the Tropic because it is pretty deep. And like, I like the matte colors and I wouldn't add any other matte colors, but it's just way more dramatic, I guess, because let me show you, like, the shade Silk is so pretty, but for every day, like, it's just really intense. So I'm glad I have this, especially like if I ever go out, which I'm not going to because of COVID, but this is definitely a palette I think I'll use for more dramatic makeup looks. But I do like the mattes, and I like to just tap on the shimmers, so I'll literally pick some up and then on my hand just tap like that on the lid, and as you can see, you get a less dramatic look than if I were to go like that on the lid. So that's my favorite way to use it. It's not my favorite palette, but I do find ways to use it, and if the color story speaks to you, the formula is amazing. There's nothing wrong with the formula. So that is the most I've ever paid for an eyeshadow palette. Next up is my most affordable eyeshadow palette, and those are the e.l.f. bite-sized eyeshadows. I have one in Rosewater and one in Cream and Sugar, and these are just so tiny, but the quality is pretty good. Like, the shimmers aren't going to be as metallic and intense as the Natasha Denona ones, but again, for every day, I'm fine with a flatter shimmer. Like, not flat in a bad way, but it's not super dimensional or wet looking on the lid. It's just a standard shimmer. e.l.f. has really increased their eyeshadow quality. These blend out amazingly. This is the Cream and Sugar one, and I almost wish they took out this deeper shimmer and put in a like mid-tone brown color for like a lid shade, because for me this is not dark enough to really act as like my transition shade. I still need to play around with it, but personally I would have one of the light shimmers and then like a mid-tone brown. And the Rosewater one I've actually been using more lately, and I love this. If you like purpley or cool toned eyeshadows, this is beautiful. This first shimmer shade is stunning. It's seriously my favorite for every day. Just looks like that, and it just looks so pretty on the lids. Again, it's not super intense or metallic or dimensional, but it just looks pretty, and these are $3, so I highly recommend these. They have more shades, so a color story for everyone, and you can also combine them. So this with like the pumpkin palette would be really pretty, but overall these are cheap, but you get so much bang for your buck. The quality of these shadows are so good. They blend out so easily, even these darker shades, and I highly recommend them, even though they're, what, $3? Okay, next is your everyday eyeshadow palette, which again, like something like the Tropic palette, I might have said for everyday because for me, I could use this every single day in my life and I'd be happy. And I also have others that I think are everyday. To me, every day I switch between, but this is the best place I had for this palette, and it's the Charlotte Tilbury Darling palette. I love how small this palette is. I really, really love small palettes, especially because most big palettes I don't like every shade in, but this one is so pretty. It's on the warmer side definitely, and it's not as pink as the Pillow Talk palette. Admittedly, I haven't used like this dark shade or this shimmer shade, but I have used this middle matte shade quite a bit, not like a whole ton, but this is just a really good crease shade for me, or lid shade. I have really hooded eyes, so I prefer to put my matte colors just on the lid and put shimmers on top, and I find it flatters me a lot more. And then these shimmers are gorgeous. This peachy shimmer is stunning. This light shimmer is really pretty. Like, this is just a really pretty palette, and her formula is really easy to blend out. It doesn't emphasize wrinkles or anything. I think the thing I read about Charlotte Tilbury makeup is it's meant to work for all ages, so the eyeshadows are not going to be something that emphasizes wrinkles on the lid, emphasizes dryness, or is super hard to work with, which I definitely agree with. They are expensive, some of her palettes, but because this is a 6-pan and you get, I think you pay just as much as her quads, this is worth it if you like high-end makeup and you really like these shades. I think the thing with Charlotte Tilbury is debating if it's worth the price for you, and then also if you like the color story. I feel like if you like this color story, you'll enjoy this palette. I did get this for free, but it is just such a pretty palette, and it's so small that it's so easy to throw in a makeup bag. Next is most colorful, which is undoubtedly my e.l.f. and J. Kissa To The Rescue palette. I decorated this myself. I have my cat's name on it, so I have Milo, Crystal, and then I didn't have enough O's for my cat Boo Boo, but I put a little B there. And this is just a really beautiful rainbow palette. I need to pull this out more. I think in an upcoming makeup basket I want to put this in, but this is just any rainbow color I would need. Admittedly, for everyday, I really like the orange and yellow shades. I don't really venture out in color for the everyday, but I love this palette just to play around with, and I think this is $20, so for me, it's not too expensive where I feel bad about having it, because I don't wear these shades every day, but I still really like having a palette to play around with, like at night, just to practice blending or to play with color stories or whatever, because I'm not gonna like use up this whole palette, or I'm not gonna use this every day, but it's cheap enough and I use it often enough that I can justify having it. I love the shade Suki. Sorry, I don't know why I started, but that's the orange shimmer shade right there. It is just such a pretty, like, tangerine. Again, not a super intense shimmer, but it's just so pretty on the lid. All of these are vegan and eye safe, which is really impressive, especially for the red shadows. And at first I thought this was a little bit patchy and like blended out too much, but with an eyeshadow primer I find it works fine, and I really enjoy having this and playing with it. So this is definitely my most colorful palette. Next category is smallest, which I'm not going to spend too much time on because it is again the e.l.f. bite-sized shadows. They are just super tiny and perfect. I love the size of these because you can just pick the color story that you like. They didn't try and combine too many into one, so you really have options, and these are so nice. The packaging, like, I mean, it's plastic, but it still doesn't feel like it's gonna break. Again, I'm not gonna spend too much time on it, but my biggest palette is the Natasha Denona Tropic. It is huge. It's like the size of my face, but it doesn't feel so big that I don't know how to hold it. It's not like the Morphe James Charles palette. Like, it still fits in my hand. I love the mirror. The mirror is huge. Sorry, it came with like smudges on the mirror, but this is my biggest palette, but I really enjoy it. It's not too big for me to feel like it's a huge project to get it out. The palette with my best memory is the M Cosmetics Divine Skies eyeshadow palette. I don't have any old palettes to like have a memory with. I try not to get attached to it, but this is a palette my boyfriend got me for my birthday. I did pick it out and I knew I was getting it, but he did get this for me. He also got me a Anastasia palette for Christmas, which I actually sold. Like, I don't try and keep attachments to that, and he doesn't really care, but this one he did get for me, and this palette is stunning. I use every single shade in here. This one compared to the Charlotte Tilbury one, I think I would choose the M Cosmetics one over it because I really use every shade. You have pinky shades, a brown shade, which isn't too deep, but it can still work as a deepener, and all of the shimmers are so stunning, and I use them all. So this palette is amazing because It is genuinely a palette where I use every single shade, and the formula is amazing. Like, it's pigmented, but it can easily be sheared out. It's just, this palette is so good. If you haven't tried this out and you love these shades, I would highly recommend it. Next is Worth the Hype, and for that I picked the Rowan eyeshadows. It comes in like a little case, which I keep it in, I don't know why, but I have the 75 Degrees Warm palette, and this is what it looks like. These shadows I got during the first Sephora sale. I actually got these because of Jamie Page, I want to say. I think it was Jamie Page, and these shadows are stunning. I feel like this can also be a palette where you can get an everyday look out of this and still play around, because they're just such a unique formula. They're like a cream eyeshadow where you have to use pressure to activate them, but they look so pretty on the lids. I'll show you. This red one is one of my favorites, and just on the lids you can blend it out to not be super intense, but there's still that like glitter and shimmer to it. It's just so pretty. Like, I seriously have nothing like it. It's definitely not everyone's cup of tea because it is messy. It isn't like a super structured eyeshadow where you can do super and like precise looks. For me, it's more so I just take it and I put it on my lid and blend out the edges and I call it a day. To me, it makes me feel like such a cool girl. Like, I don't know, it's just cool girl eyeshadow where it's nice and glittery, but it's not so put together and intense. It does crease a little, but with eye primer, I don't really mind, and you can always just blend it out during the day. And these shadows are pricey, but wow, are they so unique and something I get use out of every single shade, and I really love this. I want the 1111 one so badly, but I would say these are definitely worth the hype. Okay, next category is not worth the hype, which truthfully, I don't have a palette that is bad. Especially in 2020, I feel like it's hard to find an eyeshadow palette with a bad formula, especially from a higher end brand. Like, everyone has kind of got it down. So I picked a Color Story, which I bought myself, and I do think the formula is amazing, and if you like the Color Story, 100% you're gonna love the palette. But for me, it's not worth the hype, and it's the Natasha Denona Bronze palette, which I'm not decluttering anytime soon, and I'm going to continue using this often. But for me, like, I don't know, it's just too deep for me, I would say, which I don't even know if I stand by that. I don't use every shade in this palette all the time because there are so many shimmers. I only use once a day, and I feel like my looks kind of look the same. Not really, because picking a different shimmer every day does spice up the look, and if you do more fun looks, I feel like you get a lot of use out of this palette. But for me, I pick a matte and I pick a shimmer, and that's my look. So it's still a palette I will use all the time, but is it my favorite palette? No. So that's why I'm going to say it's not worth the hype for me personally, because it is so hyped up as being like the most everyday Natasha Denona palette. But for me, I prefer neutral light colors, and this is definitely warm and it goes pretty deep. So I still love this palette. Like, I'm so glad I got it, and I'm going to continue to use it all the time, but it's not my favorite Natasha Denona palette. So for the price, it's not worth the hype for the Color Story. But again, if you like this Color Story, 100% you're going to love the formula, because the formula is stunning, especially on the shimmers. Her formula is amazing. They literally are like butter. So I think what I'll do is combine this palette with the Tropic palette and use the Tropic palette for a lot of mattes, and then I can use all the shimmers in here since there are a lot more everyday shimmers in here. So I don't know, this doesn't really count as not worth the hype because I do love this palette, but it's the only one that I was kind of like, dang it, I should have just waited for her to come out with like this, but more neutral, but whatever. So the next category is favorite palette from a favorite brand. So definitely my favorite palette at the moment, and one of my favorite brand of eyeshadows is Natasha Denona, and my favorite palette is the Tropic palette. I've talked about this so many times in this video, but her eyeshadow formula is amazing. I'm not going to be collecting her palettes or anything because I don't have that kind of money, and I don't wear enough variety in my eyeshadows, but I definitely would pick up her palettes again if a Color Story called to me. But to talk about a new palette, I picked the Charlotte Tilbury Instant Eye palette. I have been getting into Charlotte Tilbury in the recent months. I love her brand, and I actually haven't used this palette, but I already know it's going to be a favorite. Now, I got this on sale for like $30 from Nordstrom, And the reason I haven't used it is because I've been forcing myself to use the Tartelette in Bloom every time I want to reach for this palette, because this is pretty similar shade-wise to what I would use. So you have like a neutral brown and you have your pink. And definitely I like the color story in this one more because I feel like I can use more of the shades. But I just have been wanting to make progress on the Tartelette one. So I've just been saving this for another day. I don't know why. It doesn't really make sense when I say it out loud, but to me, I only bought this because it was on sale. It is a palette that I wanted, but I wanted it in the future. But since it was on sale, I figured I would buy it and then just save it for a later date. So that's what I've been doing. But again, her formula is amazing. I love the shades in here. They're just so pretty. I won't use these pink shades too often, but everything else I could see myself using on the daily. So I really love this palette and it's going to be one of my favorites. And then last category is most used, which is of course the Tartelette in Bloom. This palette is disgusting and I have hit pan on 2 of the shades. These are the only eyeshadows I've ever hit pan on, and that is definitely my most used, but I don't feel like talking your ear off because I feel like I've talked about some of these palettes so much and you get the point that I love them. But anyways, those are all the eyeshadow palettes I owned. Luckily, I was able to fit them all into a category, so I have nothing else to talk about. I do have single shadows, which I will talk about now since I've been doing a collection series on my channel. I did lip glosses and I recently uploaded a blush one. So I don't want to do a separate video just on single eyeshadows, so I'll talk about those right now. But I hope you guys enjoyed the tag, and let's just get on into my single eyeshadow collection. Just a heads up, I literally have 3, so this isn't going to take long. The first is the Charlotte Tilbury Eyes to Mesmerize in Rose Gold. This is a cream eyeshadow, as are the other ones. This is just a super pretty everyday shadow. Again, it's not something super metallic, not something super dimensional. It's just an easy, like, throw it on your lid, blend it out, and call it a day. So that is my favorite thing to do with it. Just take a really thin amount and put it on my lid. I don't like it to be too thick because I feel like it looks kind of weird. But just take a little bit and put it on my lid, blend out the edges, and I feel like it's just a really pretty one shadow look. I think you can also combine it with powders, but for me, this is just a one shadow look, as are my other cream eyeshadows. So I really like this. I want to get the shade Oyster Pearl, which is what Jessica Braun talks about a lot. But you get so much product in here that I know they're expensive, but they're gonna seriously last me for so long. And the shade is really pretty. It's not a super warm or gold rose gold, like a yellow rose gold. It is more so a pink rose gold, which I really prefer. If you can't tell, I love pink eyeshadows. The other 2 I have are from Nude Sticks. I have 2 magnetic matte eye colors. One is Terra and one is Chocolate. Terra is literally the most pretty one shade everyday peachy eyeshadow. So it looks like that when you apply it at full pigmentation. I blend it out a lot. It's getting patchy because it's such a bad place to swatch. But it's the prettiest sheer peach eyeshadow. It's a dupe for the Glossier Sky Washes, I think they're called. There's a peachy color, and this looks to me almost like the same exact shade, but a much better formula because it's not so patchy and you can make it more opaque. So if you like that color, definitely check out Terra. This would look so good if you have light skin tone, just as a overall peach color. I highly, highly recommend this, especially because Nude Sticks goes on sale pretty often. The second one I have is Chocolate, which I use as like a liner. So it just looks like that. I use it as a like liner on my upper lash line. I can even wear it today. I would just smudge it on and then take a brush and blend it out, or just take a eyeliner brush and like smudge it on the stick and then put it on my eye. It's just a nice like everyday brown liner color. You can also do a wing and blend out the wing. You can do whatever, but these are super easy to work with and I do like these, but I would only get colors that you think you'll wear often because they are kind of expensive and you get a decent amount of product, but I'm happy with the 2 I have. So those are all of the eyeshadows that I have in my collection. I'm super happy with where my collection is at, but I definitely don't need any more everyday eyeshadow palettes. Like, I have plenty of pinky browns. I don't need any more, so I'm hoping not to buy any more anytime soon. I might get a purple eyeshadow palette or get some singles in my collection because, again, I only have 3 singles and I would be happy adding more, but overall I don't think my collection is going to change much anytime soon. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know what collection video you guys want to do next. I'm thinking about doing bronzers next, but definitely let me know down in the comments. Subscribe, like this video, and check me out on Instagram where I do more product shots, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!